Over the last couple of weeks on Locked On Mets, I have been going through my top 10 list of the biggest disappointments of the 2021 season, and we're finally at number one, which is that Jacob deGrom did not get the chance to finish one of the greatest seasons in MLB history.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Now, we have finally reached my number one biggest disappointment of the 2021 season, and it is that Jacob deGrom was unable to finish the season where he was running away with the Cy Young. He was a leader in the MVP race in the first half, and then injuries completely derailed his season. On today's show in the first segment, I'm going to talk about deGrom's 2021, what he was on pace to do, and put that into context of MLB history. In the second segment, I want to talk about what would really have disappointed me, not only that deGrom and his injury derailing this season, but the fact that deGrom, due to COVID, has maybe had a piece of MLB history stripped from him. I really believe that deGrom would have been the third pitcher in MLB history to record 4 straight Cy Young seasons, and because of the shortened season in 2020, his subsequent injuries in 2021, that did not happen. We will finish today's show in the last segment talking about the future of Jacob deGrom with the Mets. We've talked about a potential contract extension, going to go through where deGrom stands with the Mets moving forward and his path towards Cooperstown. Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing about the Mets at justbaseball.com. So, we've gone through the numbers, but let's just do it again because it's fun to talk about how ridiculously dominant Jacob deGrom was this year. He made 15 starts, 108 ERA, 146 strikeouts in 92 innings pitched. He went 7-2 for his own record, and the team went 11-4 when he was on the mound. If you want to know why the Mets were in first place in the first half, it's because they had the best pitcher in baseball putting together a season that we have honestly never seen before. If you look at the strikeouts, if you look at the fact that he was pumping in 102 every start, the fact that he was averaging 99 miles per hour on his fastball as a starting pitcher, putting up K rates that you only see from closers going all out for one inning. The guy was ridiculous. He produced 10 runs of offense, because that's not to mention the fact he hit over 360 this year. So as a hitter, between RBIs and runs scored, 10 runs of offense produced by Jacob deGrom. He only allowed 11 earned runs all season, 11 earned runs in 15 starts. The guy was simply remarkable. And deGrom ended up with the 6th highest WAR when it comes to pitchers in baseball at 4.9. Despite throwing 75 less innings than any of the other pitchers in the top 10. Corbin Burns, who actually led the league with his WAR, or his Fangraphs WAR, I should say, he was the pitcher that was just over 75 innings. Very similar to deGrom in the fact that he was just nothing but strikeouts, keeping the ball in the yard. Incredible advanced analytics when it comes to all those metrics as regards to his xFIP and all the measurements to how dominant Burns was. And deGrom, on a smaller sample size, was still better. This guy was ridiculous. His BABIP, which is batting average on balls put in play this year, was 213. Now, that is partially due to some great defense behind it, but really it's because no one could square up Jacob deGrom. That leads to soft contact. No one's getting hits when they do put a bat in the ball, and they're not even putting a bat in the ball often. His xFIP was 1.61, the best mark in baseball. xFIP is expected fielding independent pitching, which tries to tell you what a pitcher's ERA should be when you remove park factors, when you normalize home runs to fly balls, and all those different things, when you take defense out of play, when you just focus on what a pitcher can control, how hard they hit the ball, how often they hit the ball. Jacob deGrom was producing at a rate that you just don't see. His 1.08 ERA was not far off from his 1.61 xFIP. That means throughout the season, naturally, he was going to give up more runs, but he, in my opinion, was on pace for a season where his ERA would have been under 2 and had a chance to be under 1.5. Just ridiculous stuff. You look at his walk rate this year of 3.4%, lowest in baseball, highest strikeout percent at 45.1. I mean, think about that. As a starting pitcher, he was nearly striking out one of every 2 batters that stepped up to the plate. Just insane. His strikeout per 9, 14.28, would have led baseball as a qualified pitcher. His walk rate of 1.08, same deal there. You look at the expected metrics, expected batting average against Jacob deGrom, 145, expected slugging percentage, 246, expected WOBA, 190, all the best marks in baseball. Bottom line, the guy was absolutely untouchable this year. And one of the things that's so remarkable about Jacob deGrom is he's always been a flamethrower, right? 2014 comes up as a rookie, throwing the ball hard, makes an all-star team in 2015, blows everyone away, just fastball, 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 striking out the side. But the guy then is not throwing as hard as the guy now. He somehow gets better year over year. And if you remember in 2020, what he said that allowed him to suddenly hit 99 with such regularity is he stopped trying to throw hard. He trusted his mechanics. He trusted that natural whipping motion that he creates. And you look at the results. As a rookie, his average fastball velocity, 95.6 miles per hour. Then it went to 93.9, then 95.1, then 95.9 in his first Cy Young season, 96.9 in his second Cy Young season. Then in 2020, 98.6 in this year for the first time, averaging over 90 miles per hour on his fastball at 99.2. His slider is absolutely unhittable. This year, the whiff rate on his slider, 58.1%. If you're swinging at his slider, you're not touching it. That's what that number tells you. His changeup, 47.3% whiff rate. All 3 of his primary pitches when it comes to put away percentage were over 37.5%. That's ridiculous. Okay. That means he's able to strike out any batter on any pitch in any location. The other day I talked about Tomas Nido, and when he was behind the plate with deGrom, his strikeout to walk rate was over 19 strikeouts to every walk. It just absurd stuff that we saw from this guy. And you look at his ERA plus, and this is a stat that will measure what a player's ERA should be and normalize it across the league. It accounts for external factors like ballparks and opponents, then adjusts. So a score of 100 is league average. So if you have a ERA plus of 150, you're 50% better than league average. For Jacob deGrom, his ERA plus in 2021 was 373, meaning he was 273% better than the league average pitcher. So Jacob deGrom was clearly going to win a Cy Young. When he went down, the Mets season went downhill because you didn't have that stopper every 5th day getting you wins at, an 80% clip when you look at the team's winning percentage with him on the mound. And if he was even able to make 20 starts this year instead of 15, he might have been in that Cy Young conversation. That's how gaudy those numbers were. If he was healthy the whole year, I really believe he was going to win an MVP. And there's only been 2 other pitchers in MLB history that have actually won 3 straight Cy Youngs. You had Greg Maddux, you had Randy Johnson, and they both did it 4 times actually. So those are the only times any pitcher has accomplished that feat. Jacob deGrom, back-to-back Cy Young winner in 2018 and 2019. And to me, it's so disappointing that because you had the shortened season in 2020, he did not get that real chance to defend that title for a 3rd time. Then you have this year, which I really think was impacted by knocking him out of his routine. He ended up getting hurt. I really believe that had he been able to pitch on regular rest, continue to keep that arm in tip-top shape, he might have had a healthy season in 2021 as well. And who knows, he might have had a chance to make baseball history. That's what I want to talk about next. Could Jacob deGrom have become the 3rd pitcher in MLB history to ever win 4 straight Cy Youngs? One reason to repair and maintain your cars is to save money. So why would you choose to spend 30%, 50%, maybe even 100% more for the exact same auto parts at a chain store new car dealership when you can just go to rockauto.com, a family business that's been serving auto parts to customers online for 20 years. They have everything you can want, from engine control modules to brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks and have it delivered directly to your door. The rockauto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle, then choose the brand specifications and prices you prefer. Go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right locked on in there. How'd you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So while I understand that Jacob deGrom's Cy Young streak ended last season when Trevor Bauer won the award, not this year, it still bothers me the way COVID impacted baseball history. Because one of the things that is so special about baseball, it's the numbers. It's Max Scherzer having season after season with 200 plus strikeouts, and then you throw in a 60 game sample, and suddenly that streak ends, even though it went back years and years and years. You have the Cy Young fate of Jacob deGrom, where he, since 2018, has been on a different level than any other pitcher in the sport. It's just that simple. Since that season, no one has been as good as Jacob deGrom. I don't care about Trevor Bauer. I don't care about Corbin Burns. I don't care about Max Scherzer, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola. Any year where any of these guys have been in the conversation, to me, Jacob deGrom, if you look at all the advanced numbers, he continues to prove that he's the best pitcher in baseball. He throws harder than anyone else. He's got better control than anyone else. He strikes out more batters than anyone else. He limits the home run ball. He is simply incredible. And this is a part of his career that was going to lead to him ending up in Cooperstown. And that's not to say that he can't still be a Hall of Famer. I still believe he probably will be a Hall of Famer. But when you look at a player who debuted at 26, he really needs to wow in this sample size, in his prime. Right now, his 8-year prime has been sensational. You start with the Rookie of the Year. You have a couple of Cy Youngs mixed in there. The ERA of 2.50. He's been awesome. But having 4 straight Cy Youngs is guaranteed in Cooperstown. And in the 2021 season, Jacob deGrom was as dominant as anyone. Trevor Bauer was great, okay? We can look at all the off-the-field stuff and talk about why he's a bad human being. But on the mound that year, he deserved the award. I'm not taking anything away from Trevor Bauer. But what I will say is the numbers are pretty close. And really, it came down to the end of the season narrative that pushed Bauer over the top, because Jacob deGrom, over his final 3 starts, only pitched 14 innings and gave up 8 runs that year. Now, he had to come out in one of those starts due to an injury concern after just 2 innings. Gave up a bunch of runs that game, or gave up 3 runs that game. That was against the Phillies. Comes back, is good for the last 2 starts, but not great. Didn't pitch shutouts. Where meanwhile, you had Bauer, his final start of the season, he pitched on short rest for a team that needed to make the playoffs. He was trying to win that game, and he would have been able to pitch the final game of the season had they needed him to. Goes against a division rival they're competing for to get that playoff spot in the Brewers. He strikes out 12 over 8 innings, allows just 1 run. He was awesome that game. I remember watching that start and seeing what Trevor Bauer did, and I was like, this guy just put together a performance that's going to win him a Cy Young, and that's exactly what happened. But you look at Jacob deGrom's xFIP that year, and again, expected fielding independent pitching. This is a stat that predicts what a pitcher's ERA will be based on how they're pitching. So Jacob deGrom at 2.46 was better than Trevor Bauer by a long shot, who was at 3.69. Now, if you look at expected ERA, another stat very similar, Bauer grades out a little bit more favorably. So this is not a clear indication of what would have happened. But when I look at Trevor Bauer's season and the fact that he was stranding 90% of his runners for his left on base percentage, I just think at a certain point, the wheels would have fell off a little bit. And I believe that over the season, if it was a full year and he was making 32 starts, I think Jacob deGrom would have proven to be the best pitcher in baseball and would have won that award. And I also think there is something to be said about a guy like Jacob deGrom getting to stay on his routine. This is an athlete who is at the height of his craft. He is a physical specimen who needs that routine to be an effective starting pitcher. This isn't just like playing basketball where you stay in good shape, you can stay in game shape, you can go into a bubble in Orlando and perform at a high level and win a championship and still have a normal career. And honestly, even in the NBA, we saw the effects of the bubble the following season. They had the shortened off season, and it threw those athletes into whack. For a pitcher in particular, that routine is vital. That ability to take the ball every 5th day. That's why Marcus Stroman and what he just did was so impressive, because he didn't pitch at all last year and came in made all of his starts, led baseball in starts, and was effective the whole year. So you look at Jacob deGrom, and I really think that he has been impacted by that routine getting upended due to COVID. And you still look, and Jacob deGrom, he had a better F WAR than Trevor Bauer last year. Over a full season. Again, I believe that deGrom wins that award. And if he does that, who knows? Maybe he can join this elite history where you have Greg Maddux and Randy Johnson, the only pitchers that have ever won 4 straight Cy Youngs. And you look at what those guys did, right? For Greg Maddux, it started in 1992 with the Cubs. Then he went to the Braves and won 3 straight in his first 3 years there. He was an absolute workhorse. So there's a little difference there between him and deGrom because Maddux eclipsed 260 innings in 3 of those Cy Young seasons. In his 3 years following his Cy Youngs, he pitched to a 2.72 ERA, then a 2.20 ERA, where Pedro beat him out for an ERA title at 1.90 and won the Cy Young when he was an Expo. Then you have 1998, Greg Maddux won another ERA title at 2.22, led the league in WHIP at 0.98, had an ERA plus of 187. The only reason he didn't win the Cy Young in 98 is because his teammate Tom Glavine won it. And it was really just because Tom Glavine was a 20-game winner. Max was a 16-game winner, something that was out of their control. Yet Glavine gets the nod, even though Max was the better pitcher. You look at Randy Johnson, what he did to win 4 straight. You have 99 through 2002, where he was the most dominant thing we've ever seen on a baseball field. I remember as a kid growing up, Randy Johnson was like a mythical creature. This huge 6'6" guy coming from the left side. You know, everyone remembers where he hit the bird and the bird exploded. This was a guy that struck out 364 in his first Cy Young season of that 4 straight, 347, then 372, then 334, 3 ERA titles in that mix, 31 complete games in those 4 years, an ERA plus of over 180 each year. It's different eras. Those guys were allowed to go out there, rack up more innings, and that also helped them, rack up the strikeouts and put together ridiculous numbers. But you look at their careers, these are guys, when it comes to Max, debuted at 20, had a 23-year career. Randy Johnson debuted at 24, had a 22-year career. They were able to assert themselves as some of the greatest pitchers of all time over a longer span than I believe Jacob deGrom will have. So this ability to win 4 straight Cy Youngs was even more important to deGrom and authoring his legacy. And you look at what he could have done this year. There's only been 5 pitchers in the live ball era that have had ERAs under 2, or the best 5, right? You have Greg Maddux, 1995, 1.63 ERA. Louis Tiant, 1968, a 1.60 ERA. Greg Maddux again in 94, 1.56. Doc Gooden, we all remember, 1985 at 1.53. And then Bob Gibson, arguably the greatest season ever by a pitcher at 1.12. deGrom had a chance to beat out Gibson and put together a season this year that could have been regarded as the greatest in MLB history, and take aside the 4 straight Cy Youngs, that would have been really impressive. He had a chance to strike out guys in a way that Randy Johnson couldn't. At 14.3, that strikeout per 9 rate is better than anything Randy Johnson ever put up. If he did it over a full year, that's history. It might not have been 370 strikeouts because he might not have pitched well over 200 innings, but it still could have been special. So the fact that that legacy got ripped out from under Jacob deGrom due to injuries, it's just gut-wrenching. And moving forward, there's now a ton of concerns because what's the rest of Jacob deGrom's career going to look like? What is the rest of his Hall of Fame legacy going to look like? And that's what we're going to talk about in just a bit. I want to go through the future with Jacob deGrom and the New York Mets. Not only is the NFL season in full swing, basketball is now back. And as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for pro and college football action. And of course, the NBA with a new updated site and interface. There's now even more odds, props, and contests available at betonline.ag. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use the promo code NFL100. From football, basketball, playoff baseball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. So, as I said before, when we talk about a Hall of Fame career, it always comes down to a 7 and 8 year prime and then longevity. That's part of it. That's baked into the equation. David Wright, as a 7 year peak, was a Hall of Famer, but he did not put up enough stats, did not play long enough to be able to be considered that level of a player. You see that with someone like Don Mattingly, who's still not a Hall of Famer, even though there's an argument for him to get in as a veteran committee selection. Of course, happy birthday, by the way, to Keith Hernandez. That was on today on Wednesday. That Keith had his 68th birthday. A guy that absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But you look at Jacob deGrom, and this is a guy who has stats that are going to be appreciated enough by current voters when he actually gets to that point that I think he'll still get in, but he has to, at this point, still pitch for, I think, another 5 years and at least be close to what he's been to ensure that spot in Cooperstown. And he can do it. I don't think that Jacob deGrom's career's over after one injury plagued year. If you look at his career, he has been durable pretty much all the way through. Had the 2016 season where he dealt with some injuries, missed a little bit of time in 17, but overall, 2018, 2019, 2020, he was healthy. This is the first year where obviously there's been some concern, but I think fans are always swept up in this recency bias where suddenly now Jacob deGrom's arm doesn't work, and now he's never gonna pitch again. And I see everyone freaking out about, oh, I hope that Jacob deGrom. I've seen somebody actually comment that if Jacob deGrom opts out of that contract, he should be allowed to walk, and the Mets should not try to retain him because his arm doesn't work. That's a little ridiculous to me. I still think Jacob deGrom is going to be able to figure out his health. Maybe he does have to find a way to throw a little bit less hard, but then again, his velocity comes from such fluid mechanics that I don't even necessarily know if that is realistic to expect him to try to curtail it, because I really do think that velocity is a natural byproduct of how he has perfected his craft. We see Charlie Morton in his late 30s throwing 98 miles per hour. Max Scherzer still throwing hard. So I think pitchers are going later and later into their careers. We're seeing across sports that athletes are able to invest in their bodies now, get on the perfect diet, the perfect workout routine, and find a way to prolong their careers into their 30s and sometimes into their 40s. And this is with the top 1%, the LeBron Jameses, the Tom Brady's, Chris Paul. You look at the best athletes and they're able to have that longevity. So I think Jacob deGrom still has a great chance to maybe even have another 10 seasons if everything breaks right. I don't know if he'll be a Cy Young for 10 seasons, but I could see him being a Cy Young for five, or not saying win five more Cy's, but be that type of a pitcher and then be still a quality starting pitcher, almost like Clayton Kershaw, who still finds a way to be good year over year in the later stages of his career as he gets into his late 30s and into his 40s. But you're talking about a pitcher, as I said, career 2.50 ERA. He is on that Hall of Fame trajectory. And to me, what would really boost that resume is having the moments in October. And what frustrates me, I've said every single year, I've been listening to this podcast, I've said the greatest sin in baseball is that Jacob deGrom and Mike Trout have not been playing October baseball in years. And for deGrom, it's since 2015. The fact that he has not thrown a pitch in October since 2015 is a crime. It's a crime against the Wilpons. It's a crime against Alderson. It's a crime against Cohen. It's a crime against everyone. You got to get this man into the playoffs because he's just that good. Can you imagine right now if we were watching a game 5 of the NLCS and Jacob deGrom's on the bump? Can you imagine what this guy could do in a playoff situation where you're trying to close out a game 6 and he comes out of the bullpen on Tuesday's rest to pitch the last 3 innings? I just want to see it. I want to see this guy back in October because we saw when he was just a puppy when it comes to his big league career in 2015, where he had none of his good stuff in game 5 against the Dodgers team, that he still found a way just based on grit, determination, and baseball IQ to work his way through a start without his best stuff and get a victory. He's special, and I want to see that more than anything. So when you look at where the Mets go from here with Jacob deGrom, you can go back on the YouTube page or on the podcast feed, find the episode where I talk about the time being now for a Jacob deGrom extension. I also wrote an article about it for justbaseball.com. And when I talked about the time being now for an extension, I wasn't really referencing the Mets being on that clock to get a deal done. It was more Jacob deGrom needing to get a new contract. If I'm his representation, I'm seeking that this offseason because you have the resume to say, hey, I'm the best player on this team. I want to get a new deal. I want to be here long term. And the Mets would have to really consider that, because if they don't, you could alienate your best player heading into a year where he's got an opt out. deGrom goes out, is healthy next year, wins the Cy Young. Now you can hit the open market with a clear conscience and try to chase rings elsewhere if this team continues to be a disaster. And you know what? Jacob deGrom has talked about wanting to stay with one team for his entire career. At a certain point, that allure of pitching in October, of getting a chance to be that guy that can shine on the biggest stage, that might be a bigger pull than staying with one organization. So the Mets have to prove that they can be that type of a team where deGrom can do a lot of winning over the final stages of his prime here. And that's what makes this offseason so incredibly important for the Mets. And that's why the fact that he had a team this year when he was in first place, where he was pitching as an MVP, the fact that that season got derailed by injuries, that's why this comes in as my number one biggest disappointment of the 2021 season. To go through them all again, to cap off this series, we had Louis Guillorme's injuries, the evaporation of pitching depth, Dominic Smith and JD Davis continuing to fail to grab a starting position and prove that they can belong and be an everyday player. You have Michael Conforto and his bad contract year, Jeff McNeil's regression, James McCann's bad first year with the Mets, Brandon Nimmo and his never-ending string of injuries, Carlos Carrasco not being able to perform for the Mets and be their number two starter. The offense as a whole was the number two biggest disappointment. And then, of course, as we've talked about all day today, Jacob deGrom comes in at number one. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. On tomorrow's show, a Friday Farm Report, where we're going to be giving out awards for the High A Brooklyn Cyclones. I will be joined by Jordan Grossman, as always. Thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Sully has you covered for everything going on this October. Follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.